I'm Jim Krensick from the Batavia Daily News, and with the election upon us, wow, only a month away, we're going to interview a lot of candidates in the upcoming weeks. And today we are lucky to have Diana Kastenbaum of Batavia, who is the Democratic nominee for the 27th Congressional District, which includes all of Genesee, Orleans, Wyoming, and Livingston counties, as well as other parts of the Buffalo and Rochester areas. Diana, I guess just to start, this has been a strange campaign where I think nationally everyone is very energized by a presidential election, and then we get down to the local levels, and there's just not this level of I guess, interest or deep diving. And for someone running for Congress for the first time, you run for city council, I guess is the most recent thing. What has that been like, just trying to break through when there's not as much attention locally?
It's not only just that. First of all, let me say thank you to the Daily News and also for having me here today. Our primaries went very late this year. So we didn't even finish the last primary till September 13th. So everybody was focused in on each and every primary. And mine was way back in June, and Secretary Clinton's was back in April. So I think that long extended primary system, once everybody got it out of their system, okay, now we are going forward, and now let's focus on the race. And so I've been getting much more attention now that we're focused in on the general election.
Was the turning point the primary?
I think it was. There was a very contentious DA's race in the Democratic in my district in the Buffalo area, and so a lot of the focus was on that race, which was important, very important. And but now everybody seems to now we've got to get everybody elected. So I've seen a marked difference, and it's been good. So, and also it's summer. People they're not paying too much attention to it, nor do they want to, So this is now everybody's really focused in, and I would say it's a good thing.
And as this focus comes in, how have you tried to present yourself? Because I believe you announced your candidacy back in February. People have had time to learn about the candidates for office. Well, what is how are you presenting yourself? Because you're not someone who has previously been on the political stage to this degree.
I think I'm known pretty much in the Glow region, especially now since I've been out stumping all summer long and in this past spring. So people really have a good name recognition for me. But the efforts have to be put forth into Erie County and Niagara County. Ultimately, that's where the majority of the votes are. So I feel very, very comfortable that I've been out and about in all of the other counties, not just once, not twice, but multiple times, and at every parade, at every festival, eating my way through everything, I should say, but in meeting the people. And I've also had, there was a gentleman that came on board, Dr. Arnold Matlin from Geneseo, and he and his wife have been hosting house parties for me. They did this with Kathy Hochul and for her campaign, and that has proved so beneficial because we must have had at least a dozen. And that's where I really got to meet my supporters, get my volunteers, and also, financial support too. So that's been really wonderful. But the focus really has to be in this last month on getting out the vote and canvassing and phone banking.
But do you find that people know you? Obviously, there's a push here. This is a part of a much wider race. But what are people? I guess, do people understand who you are, what you come from? I guess this is the thing of there will be people that vote a straight party line, but how do you compel people to say okay, they reach the congressional and say that's one they're going to go for.
And it really is that one-on-one meeting or that one-on-one phone call. So I've been making a lot of calls as candidates, most in federal races certainly have to do what you call call time and to raise money. And so you have a list of your Democrats, but also Republican people. And I've been out soliciting money and also trying to get people on board with the race and hoping and telling them about myself and hoping they will vote for me. in the fall. So it has been, I would say, a real groundswell of support I've gotten. It's a grassroots operation. I don't have the deep pockets necessarily to do glossy commercials. We will do some, but I don't have that kind of bankroll to do that, to buy that kind of airtime. But hopefully I've done enough of the other work, and I'm continuing to do the other work to get my name out there. And that is knocking on doors.
Do they know you more as a Democrat or as someone who, I guess locally, you may be better known as the CEO of a tool and die company?
Well, certainly locally, I'm known as the CEO of Tool and Die Casting Company, but I'm from Batavia. I was born and raised here. My mother was Lois Quartley, and and my dad is Henry Kissel, and we we've been a family that's been here for many, many years, several generations. So I think people know the name, they know me, they know my dad. My dad's been actually out with me. He is 91 years old, World War II veteran, going to be 92, he would tell you, and still going strong. So he's been out with me also campaigning, and people love my dad.
and knowing, I guess, though, there is the problem of, I see a district that, Kathy Hochul, who did win an election in 2011, when it came around in 2012, she lost to Chris Collins, your opponent in this election. She only got 47% of the vote.
Right.
And then 2 years later, a candidate, Jim O'Donnell, he ran kind of a quiet campaign. He only got a little bit more than a quarter of the vote. You're running in a very Republican area. Is this something that is viable?
As my friend would say, it's great. I like people like you who shoot arrows at the sun. And I think that we have to have a choice. And if we don't have a choice in our election process, then the same people will be getting elected over and over again. And that leads to complacency. And I think that I am certainly a viable candidate, and I can compete with Mr. Collins on many issues. And I think that once people get to meet me or they know me, it's like, yeah, she's one of us. She was born and raised here. She came back to her hometown. She runs her family business, and she cares about the people in this community. And that weighs heavily on people's minds, and that tends to make them more agreeable and willing to vote for me, I think.
In terms of issues, I mean, what do you see as what you can accomplish it's only a 2-year term, or we're in a Congress that is very kind of at a crossroads. It's not a Congress of actions, the way things are divided. And you have the potential, the Senate may be Republican, the House may still be Republican, even if districts like yours are turned over. Well, what would you be able to accomplish? What would you see as your role as a member of Congress?
Well, on the flip side, it could be a Democratic presidency, and it could be a Democratic Senate. We're very close to that, possibly flipping the Senate. The House is a little more difficult. We need to get 30 seats to be able to win the House. So that's a little more of an uphill battle, and it certainly is an uphill battle in this district because it's been heavily gerrymandered in favor of the Republicans. So it's huge. It's massive. I mean, you go from one end to the other. It goes all the way from Canandaigua on the east side to Lewiston and everything in between, and all the way down to Cattaraugus County. So it's a massive district. But I think that I have always been one of these people who I hate to go to the opposite side, to polarize the polar opposite side. Sometimes just because of your beliefs, you do, or the people you represent, maybe you feel that you need to. But I'm also one of those people that believes you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to understand the other side of the situation. And somehow, when you get into Congress, you have to meet in the middle. It can't be to the far left. It can't be to the far right. So I am prepared to work with even a Republican Congress if need be. And I'm hoping that won't be so, but I'm more than willing to work and meet them halfway. And I think that's what we need in our representatives. It can't be so vitriolic, the rhetoric. We just can't go to our opposite corners anymore.
But in terms of where you would see yourself fitting in, you'd be one of 435 people. Are there committees that you would look to focus on? What is the bill that a Congresswoman Diana Kastenbaum would be, agitating for?
Well, manufacturing. I have a manufacturing company. Now, Mr. Collins talks about manufacturing jobs, bringing jobs back. He owns 13 businesses, which he bought, failing businesses, and he brought them back to good health, and that's very admirable. But I have one small business. It's a family business. However, I think I really know what the struggles are of a small family business as opposed to larger corporations. And manufacturing is extremely important in this area. We have seen a lot of our jobs since NAFTA, and NAFTA was by President Clinton, of course we know that, and I was never a big fan of it, but we lost in this community, just in our own business, several jobs to China. So I am hoping to bring them back. Can we bring them back in terms of the wages? I don't think that we can, because the wages are much lower there, and I don't know that we can bring them back because of wages. But we can bring them back in terms of technology, investing in technology, making a good quality product. We have seen some of our jobs in our shop come back because holes were drilled wrong, there was not the correct measurements, and we have actually gotten work back. So if you build a better mousetrap, you're going to have a company that can compete here, and you also have to invest in technology. So that's of prime importance to me. And we need to not outsource our jobs anymore. I would like to see more and more business come back. I would also like to see trade agreements that are more beneficial to the United States than they are to other countries. So the TPP is on the table. I'm not in favor of that. I certainly think that we need to have not lobbyists and large corporations who have much at stake for their overseas manufacturing companies write these bills, which is what the TPP is. 85% has been written by lobbyists and large corporations. We need to have a stake in that. So I want to be a part of that.
Is that something that, as we campaign, we've seen your opponent, Chris Collins, has been the most notable for being a strident Donald Trump supporter.
Mm-hmm.
Are you at that same level with Hillary Clinton?
I am, of course, a Democrat, and of course, I support slip of the tongue there,
Yeah.
Secretary Clinton in the race, and I think she would be a wonderful, well qualified president. I guess you would say that there are two sides that I'm seeing in this election, and both are very polarized. Everybody has to pick a side. It's one of those things, you're going to have to make a vote. No matter if you really don't like that candidate, you're going to have to decide, I need to fill in this dot for this particular candidate and stand by it. And we all have to make a choice. It's in a very critical election. And I feel that my candidate is much better qualified. I feel that the top of our ticket here with Senator Schumer is, of course, he could be the majority leader. I think it will move this country forward, and we're great already. So I think that we can be even greater, and I want to see us move forward. What is the opposite of progressive? The opposite is regressive. Why do we want to go back to something? There were many people in this country that suffered tremendously, and that it was not so great for them. I know that my family, we lived down the south side of the tracks. There were Polish and Italians, and you couldn't, you didn't dare cross those tracks sometimes, and it was pretty polarized then, even in this community. So do I want to go back to that? No. I don't. I want to see us all embrace each other, live together in our communities with our neighbors, and do what is right for our communities. That's a progressive track.
And in terms of carrying that out, what is left to do this month? There obviously you have to campaign, but that is a lot to try to say. I don't know if it's something that I guess from what we've seen in this campaign, it's sort of been a pro or anti-Trump thing. Where do you have to push this though? Because this is obviously a thing where your fortunes in November are tied to other campaigns. Is it something where what's more important at this point? Is it bringing that supporter that might already be on your side in, or is it bringing someone in and pulling them to that side? Because we saw locally, at least, Hillary Clinton did struggle in the Glow region during the primary, where Bernie Sanders, did fairly well.
And that's what I'm saying. Bernie Sanders was pretty progressive, and so he won in this area. So that tells me that there are some people out there who are really do want to see some forward-thinking change. Where do we go from here? There's a lot to do. I mean, we're going nonstop. I just came from Buffalo, from a candidate forum where all of the candidates in Buffalo met, and Mr. Collins was not there, but he was invited, and it was about disability, people with disabilities. So we spoke and it was a lot of people were there in the audience, and we spoke to that issue. Mr. Collins has been out stumping for Donald Trump. He has already made it very well known he wants to be Secretary of Commerce. He hopes he will get that cabinet position in a Trump administration. He was the first person to support Donald Trump. You may like Donald Trump, but Chris Collins is actually working for his own benefit. He's working for his next feather in his cap, his blind ambition, I would say. I'm not seeing him necessarily out at all the events that I have been at this summer, and I have not seen him care that much about being and seeing all the people in this district and talking to them. And I can tell you that I have had people come up and say that to me. Oh, he's out with Donald Trump again. Here he is on CNN. Here he is on MSNBC defending a man that, is not going to necessarily help this district in some cases, and people may differ with me on that. But I think that the difference is I need to continue what I'm doing, be out meeting the people. When they meet me, they find that I'm one of you all here. I mean, this is my community. This is where I grew up. And I have no further ambition. I don't care to go anywhere else. This is not a stepping stone. You should know I'm 65 years old. This is not someplace I'm using as a stepping stone to go to some other job in government. I really want to serve the people of Western New York in New York 27. I would like to wind up my days at my home here in Batavia and be a good public servant.
Diana, that is all I have. And
I know you probably addressed this in the past when we were first speaking with you back in February, but for those who don't remember, who may not have read, why did you decide to run and throw your hat in the ring?
I've always been pretty active in politics. I mean, I had a minor in political science, and I went to school in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic University of America from 1969 to 73. So that was quite a time in our nation's history. And a lot of my political beliefs in that were shaped during that time, as I'm sure many people of my generation were. I saw many of my classmates from high school, from Alexander Central School, where I went to school and graduated in 1969. They went off to fight a war that was devastating. I mean, some did not even come home. And some are still living with the effects of that war. So I found I was always pretty politically active, to answer to the first part of that question. I moved out to California with my husband. My husband is an actor and a stand-up comedian and entertainer. Everybody knows him here. And we moved out, we had our daughter out there, but we always were involved in causes which were important to us. And one of the things that is extremely important to me is big money in government. How do we get that big money in government out? And that is a direct relation to Citizens United. So in 2010, I believe it was, I started a fundraiser with some friends of mine on the West Coast, and it was called Stand Up for Main Street. And it was actually a fundraiser that is ongoing, continues every year, but I was in the beginning stages of planning that with people from Public Citizen. And Public Citizen has been fighting on that front from the very beginning to get big money out of government and to also end Citizens United. So that was some good work I felt I did there. I also, shortly after that, a woman came to me and she wanted help in getting one of her organizations off the ground, and she felt I was very well organized, I knew what was going on, and she wanted to start a group called Vote Riders. And it was just before we moved back home, and I said, I can give you 6 months, whatever the time frame is, but it was a very good cause, that one that I believed in. There have been many voter ID laws in the country that have prevented people from getting the right to vote, from voting in the elections. And so what she did, and people in Vote Riders did, is to go out and make sure that these people have the proper identification for the states that are demanding it, such as Texas, Pennsylvania, wherever it may be. And that was I felt that was a very worthwhile organization. So I tend to go to causes that I truly believe in. Basically, it's because I really want to see democracy work. Why should we not all have the right to vote? Why should there be any restrictions? Why should big money play a role in politics? You know, I had the fortunate experience of meeting Barbara Conable when I was in high school. And you all know he lived in Alexander and he was from Wyoming and that. But I was in a presidential classroom for young Americans. It was actually the first classroom. It was an idea of President Kennedy's. And in high school, I went off to Washington for a week to study. And so I met Congressman Conable there, and he was just incredible. He was just the most wonderful man. And I hear stories of him now that he only took $50 from people. He didn't want $51. You know, $50 is my limit, my top. And he was so loved, so well respected, such an incredible congressman. Now, he was a Republican. I don't care. He was probably the greatest congressman that I know of. He was right up there, head of the Ways and Means Committee, then head of the World Bank. We all should be very proud of him. I think personally there should be a statue for that man. And I try to take a little of you know, I liked his demeanor. He had a great way of talking with people, with all the people in the community, and I try to be that way. I model myself in many ways. After him, I think I'm a personable person. The one thing that arrogance is not something that I do well. I really try to relate one-on-one with people in the community, and because you know what? My family lives here. These are my friends. These are people I went to school with. They're my neighbors. I want to be a part of this community. I want to be a part of this district. I want to serve them.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You run a small business here in Batavia, and you've been very involved with various arts groups. You ran unsuccessfully for city council.
Mm-hmm.
How does this qualify you to serve as a congresswoman?
Well, let's see. I will send you a question back. How does Donald Trump, who has never run for office, qualify him to be president of the United States? You know, I rest my case. Do you have to be a public official and to be able to run for public office in this country? I think not. I think our founding fathers never expected that. I think anybody should be able to run. Why should we would eliminate a lot of good people if that was the criteria. Now, I ran unsuccessfully, but you know what? It was a great learning experience. I did it the first year I came back to make sure that, there was something I really wanted to do. And I felt it was 9 people ran in that race. I came in the middle of the pack, and it was a wonderful experience. Sometimes when you lose, you learn more.
And I have one question. In your opinion, what would be the top 3 priorities that would directly benefit the people of this district?
Well, I think that jobs, manufacturing, bringing our jobs back, having a growing economy, and we're doing that in many of these areas. So we have the new Solar City coming in, and particularly jobs that have to do with the environment would be nice. Solar City is one of those great examples of where you can actually grow the economy and better the environment. So jobs, manufacturing, that's all very important. I also, I would say the second or the top of my list, not even to put it second, it really is the top of my list, is veterans. There are a lot of veterans in this district, and Mr. Collins, God bless him, he goes and he gives awards every month to the veterans. I think that's very admirable. But I want to say to Mr. Collins, why did you vote for $1.4 billion to underfund the Veterans Affairs? And that's actually a fact. He would say to you, well, he increased it in this last budget, and they increased it from the previous budget, but it wasn't what the veterans wanted. It wasn't what the veterans needed. It wasn't what President Obama had asked for either. And it was a shortfall of $1.4 billion. So how can you say to your vets, we're going to cut the red tape, we're going to get you services, we're going to do all of these things for you, but you don't vote for the funding that is required for our veterans? And that's an important thing the veterans really need to know here. And I try to bring it out when I talk to them. And my dad, he is a veteran. He uses the Veterans Hospital and benefits. And, sometimes it takes him a while to get an appointment. He's World War II. There's not many of those folks left, but there's so many, and our Vietnam vets. My classmates, some of them are still struggling with even Agent Orange, and that funding stopped in 1991. So what are we doing to the men and women who served our country so admirably? How are we supporting them? And we need to do a better job. And obviously it has come down to the funding, because once you cut the funding, then you've cut services.
Well, Diana, thank you so much.
Oh,
Really
thank you.
appreciate
This was a pleasure. I enjoy this so much. So thank you. And I greatly appreciate this, and I would hope that everybody could go to dianakastenbaum.com, go to my website, see some of the issues that I talk about, join me on Facebook, join me on Twitter, and when you see me on the street, please come up, shake my hand, introduce yourself to me. I want to know each and every one of you. Thank you.